Hello, and welcome to How to Make a Path of Exile to Trade Tool with some help from AI. My name is Max, and I've been building software for about 20 years now. I've worked at Apple, I worked for the government, and I worked at a startup that eventually grew to be worth $1 billion. Despite being a deeply lazy person at my core, I have over the years learned a thing or two about building software, and I want to share that with you in this course. I'm a longtime enjoyer of Path of Exile, and I've always kind of wondered how the trade tools worked under the hood, so when Path of Exile 2 came out, I decided to make one. It's called Chiseled. You can find it on GitHub if you want to check that out. And in this course, we're going to build a slimmed down version of this app from scratch together. The very first thing that I want to talk about is exactly how we're going to be using AI. And that's just because there's so much hype surrounding AI right now. And don't get me wrong, I do think it is an incredible tool. But let's be real, it absolutely does have its limits. So I made this kind of crazy looking diagram to cover reliance on AI as it relates to efficiency, required skill, and control. Let's say that we're building our app and we're taking an approach that's somewhere on the right side of this range here. AI does everything. It's very efficient. We don't have to make a ton of design decisions. We don't have to write a bunch of code. And it's very beginner friendly. We love that. But we have almost no control over the outcomes. And when you don't need a lot of control, this is awesome. You know, when it works, it works. But as soon as you do need just a little bit more control, it can be really frustrating. And maybe you've experienced this where you're trying to build something with AI and you have an idea in your head of what you want. You're trying to communicate that and it's just not getting it. You're kind of banging your head against the wall. And at some point you're like, man, this would actually be easier if I just did it myself. So now let's talk about what that side of the range looks like, where you do everything yourself. Now it's very inefficient. You are making all the decisions. You are writing all the code. It's kind of tedious. You do have to be an expert in a whole bunch of different concepts. But the upside is now you have total control over the outcomes. So I'm going to call this side of the range hard mode, and I'm going to call this side of the range slop. And I'm going to argue that the sweet spot is somewhere in the middle here. There's a bunch of stuff that we're going to be doing without any help from AI at all, especially early on. We're going to be doing all of our own design work. And that's for two reasons. The first reason is that, at least right now, AI is not very good at that stuff. And the second reason is that it'll be good for us to have a super clear picture of what we want our app to do and how we want it to be structured. We want to kind of just steer AI in the right direction. And the best way to do that is if we have a really good sense of where we want to go. And once the design work is done, we'll still have to kind of keep an eye on things. For example, if you're somebody that is a little bit intimidated at the idea of writing code, the good news is AI is going to write most of the code for us. The catch is that we absolutely will have to review every single line of code that it suggests, or it will try to sneak some garbage in there. And by the end of it, we'll have landed somewhere in the middle here on our overall reliance on AI. We'll kind of split the difference on efficiency. There will be some things that we're good at, some things that AI is good at as far as required skill, and we'll land somewhere in the middle on control. So if we have an idea in our head of what we want our app to be, we'll be able to impart that without being completely reliant on whatever AI comes up with. And you might be looking at this and saying, hey, actually, I'm a beginner and this part of the range is inaccessible to me. And in that case, I'd say right now is a great time to be a beginner. AI is an amazing tool for learning. And in this course, we're going to cover the set of skills that you would need to go from this side of the range to somewhere in the sweet spot here. So what exactly is a Path of Exile trade tool? Well, Path of Exile is a game where you run around slaying demons and hopefully get some equipment that can make your character stronger. So one thing that comes up is you get some loot and you're wondering, is this worth anything? And Path of Exile has an economy, so you can trade items to other players, but it's not always obvious what an item is worth. So one way you could determine that is you could go to the trade site and you could start to fill out this form. You could say, oh, well, they're boots and they had some movement speed on them. And there was also some lightning resistance on there. And you could search. But this kind of sucks. This is kind of tedious. I don't want to tab out of my video game to fill out a form. So wouldn't it be better if we could just hover over the item, press a hotkey, and immediately have all that populated for us? So now we can just click around a little bit and search for similar items this way and get an idea of what the value of that item is. So this is what we'll be building. This is a Path of Exile trade tool. So here's an overview of the course from here on out. This entire course is 1 hour long, meaning each step is about a few minutes long. So let's skim through this real quick. We come up with a design, we get our tools in order, we use AI to make a prototype, we take a look at how the trade site works, We use AI to integrate with the trade site API. We use AI to fix a bug. We clean things up a bit. We go back to the trade site. We use AI to support lots more item stats dynamically. We talk about tests. We use AI to wire up a hotkey. We use some design patterns. And then we deploy our app to GitHub and we set up auto updates. Okay, so stepping back for a sec, you can see that we're using AI to do a lot of the heavy lifting, but there's still a lot of things that we're doing ourselves. And the general pattern is that we do some manual legwork to understand our problem, and then we use that in our AI prompt to get a better result. And then after all that, we're usually going to come in and manually clean things up a bit. And I want to be upfront. If you are a total beginner, this is going to be a lot of new stuff getting thrown at you. I am going to show you every single step. I'm not doing anything off camera, but this isn't really like a beginner tutorial on Rust or Tauri or Git. However, you are going to see exactly how this stuff is used in practice to build a trade tool. And my hope is that even if you are a total beginner, this can show you the overall process of building and delivering software, which is what I personally think is the important part. Let's go ahead and whip up an architecture diagram. I'm in a tool right now called Lucidchart. It's free. It's what I'm used to. It's just a diagramming tool. You can use any diagramming tool. Basically, we just need to draw out some boxes and arrows. So I pulled in a screenshot here of Path of Exile, and we're going to think about the flow of our trade tool. So somebody's playing Path of Exile, they find an item, they hover over it, and they press the hotkey. So hotkey pressed. And now we've got some work to do. So we need to convert the item details into a list of trade site filters. And we'll give that a color. And once we've got the trade site filters, we need to show those to the user so that they can pick and choose what they want. So here we'll say pop-up front end, and we'll block out the front end. Give it a color as well, we'll say teal. And now we've got some trade site filters. And let's say item type of boots with some movement speed and some lightning resistance. And we'll format this guy, stick it there. And our app will also have a search button for them to press. So put that there. And we'll say search pressed. And now we've got some more work to do. So here we'll say search POE trade site for selected trade site filters. All right. And this part's actually an external request, right? We got to go out to the internet, see what exactly is on the POE trade site. We'll say purple. And then we'll have some results to show to the user. So say search result. And there might be a couple of them, so drag out a couple. And this one will be return results. Cool. And since we showed the boundary of the front end, let's go ahead and do the same for the back end. Give it a color, send it back. And just like that, without too much work, we've got an architecture diagram. And just to be transparent, I'd say this isn't a typical architecture diagram. Technically, this is more like an architecture diagram blended with a mock and a call graph, but none of that's really important. I'd say that the important thing is that we started with some ideas in our head and we fleshed them out to the point that it more closely resembles like a blueprint or a plan. Now we can start writing some code.